body and grinding down the
We'll start with this. Well, Chavez Jr. sees no reason for Canelo versus Makabu. Gives Makabu no shot.
Kind of like how they gave you no shot when you fought Canelo.
So you'll forgive me if I think that Makabu might try to put on a more ambitious effort than Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. did. He was quoted as saying, "I think Canelo is a great boxer. One of the best in boxing," said Chavez to TV Boxeo. "I don't see the need for him to do this. He fought to win 4 world titles in one division to become undisputed because it is making history in boxing. And now he wants to jump up to fight with a guy from another division who doesn't have a chance to beat him. If you want to be the best in history, you have to go step by step, winning titles in each division and beating the best. This fighter, Makabu, even if he is a cruiserweight, he is not a fighter on the same level as Canelo Alvarez,
who is one of the best in the world.
There will be difficulties in making a fight between Canelo and Makabu. At the moment, Makabu has to make a mandatory defense of his cruiserweight title on January 29th against Thabiso Muchunu in their rematch. The latter trains in South Africa, where the Omicron variant of COVID-19 was first discovered, and flights from that country to the United States are currently prohibited. Also, Makabu is promoted by Don King, who is sometimes very difficult to negotiate with. Canelo is slated to return to the ring in May, and he's exploring several other possibilities outside of Makabu. Though if this whole Omicron situation,
if Thabiso Muchunu isn't allowed to leave his country or enter into this one,
the WBC can hardly fault Lunga Makabu for that.
So maybe he moves straight into that Canelo Alvarez fight.
Having not satisfied his mandatory challenger, Thabiso Muchunu, having not had that rematch, could break down that way. Either way, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. has some choice words for the fight. He doesn't see the point of it.
I didn't see the point in Canelo fighting you.
When he fought you, at that time, the guy that people were asking Canelo Alvarez to fight
was Triple G.
Was Gennady Golovkin. And Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. was a prelude to that fight. Better still, ahead of the fight, I didn't see the point in Canelo fighting Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Wasn't for a title.
This fight with Lunga Makabu is.
This will afford Canelo Alvarez the opportunity to become a 5-division champion. In that way, he's making history, just making history for himself and his career, his legacy.
Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. says he doesn't see the point.
Says he doesn't give Lunga Makabu a shot. Well, most people didn't give you a shot when you fought Canelo Alvarez, but he still fought you.
You weren't even a champion at the time.
Julio doesn't see the point in Canelo Alvarez adding that to his legacy, potentially becoming a 5-division champion. He doesn't see the point in that. What's supposed to be the point in Julio fighting Jake Paul?
Because that's what he's supposed to be doing.
What's the point in watching a Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. fight at all when the apple has fallen so obviously far from the tree? I didn't forget this guy quit against Daniel Jacobs, and I didn't forget that his career...
He ain't his daddy, I'll tell you that much.
You see, everybody's entitled to their own opinions, and sometimes those opinions come in the form of critiques, criticism. And the problem with criticism is when you levy it against someone else, you leave yourself open for someone to levy it against you. You want us to look at Canelo versus Makabu under a harsh light. We might do that, but we might also do the same thing to you. And when we do it to you, we see that even with this fight that you don't think that much of,
okay,
Canelo's still doing more than you are.
He's vying to become a 5-division champion, and you might end up fighting a fucking YouTube.
I mean, are you fucking serious? The audacity of these people that are so critical of what Canelo Alvarez is doing, having become
undisputed
super middleweight division's undisputed champion in only 11 months. He hasn't stopped being ambitious. He now wants to become a 5-division champion. And these guys, Julio doesn't see the point in the fight, but Julio's a guy who's gearing up to fight a YouTuber. What's the point in that? Think about a guy like Zerto Ramirez. Zerto Ramirez, who's at 175 pounds right now, he doesn't have a title, and he just went life or death with Yunieski Gonzalez. What's supposed to make him head and shoulders above anybody and everybody else?
He's not bringing a title for Canelo to win.
David Benavidez.
He's not bringing a title for Canelo to win.
Jamal Charlo.
He's not bringing a title for Canelo to win.
Demetrius Andrade.
He's not bringing a title for Canelo to win.
The disconnect here, the misconception in some circles is that guys like me are against Canelo Alvarez fighting these guys. Well, no, I'm not against Canelo Alvarez fighting these guys. I'm saying that these guys are indistinguishable from each other. Nobody stands out,
Thus making a champion at cruiserweight permissible.
Not against him fighting these guys the same way I'm not against him fighting Lunga Makabu. And if there's supposed to be something special about these guys, I'd sure like to know what it is, because Lunga's bringing a belt to the table. What are these guys bringing?
There's nothing special about these guys.
If I'm being honest, the real challenges for Canelo Alvarez don't lie with middleweights or super middleweights. No, it's not Jamal Charlo, Demetrius Andrade, or even David Benavidez, for that matter, that I view as the most challenging matchups and the most compelling matchups for Canelo Alvarez at this point. The most compelling matchups for Canelo, as far as I'm concerned, at this point, lie at 175 pounds, lie with Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol.
Those just so happen to be two guys he's looking at.
Among several others. It's the funniest thing. In October of 2019, Andre Ward said that Canelo Alvarez would never fight Beterbiev.
Andre Ward, who's been accused of shading Canelo Alvarez quite a bit as of late.
Andre Ward 2 years ago said that Canelo Alvarez would never fight Artur Beterbiev. That's what he said.
He must have been talking about himself, because he's the one that never fought Artur.
Canelo. As far as Canelo, Bob Arum has said Canelo Alvarez and Eddie Reynoso have expressed interest to him about potential fights with light heavyweight champions Artur Beterbiev and Joe Smith Jr.
So how's that for never?
As you can imagine, Canelo Alvarez's detractors, Andre Ward included, Andre Ward among them, they're going to try to find ways to diminish this potential matchup, this potential fight between Canelo Alvarez and Artur Beterbiev. Joe Smith Jr. as well, though the focal point of this conversation is a potential Canelo versus Beterbiev fight.
They're never going to be satisfied.
They're never going to be happy, as detractors won't. I'll tell you that right now, because in their heart of hearts, what they really want is for Canelo Alvarez to lose. What they really want is for Canelo Alvarez to fail. And so long as he keeps doing as well as he's doing, succeeding,
Andre Ward went from saying that Canelo would never fight Artur
to saying, I don't know if it's his age or the layoffs, but Beterbiev saw a lot of shots that he could not get off tonight. You will see more guys trying to fight him now. News broke that Canelo Alvarez had expressed an interest in facing Artur on the 13th of this month. Andre Ward's assessment of Artur, that came later on the 17th of this month. Thus, he can't accuse Canelo Alvarez of only expressing an interest.
Canelo expressed an interest in fighting Artur before the Marcus Brown fight.
So that kind of kills Andre Ward's narrative that you're going to see more guys trying to fight Artur now. If Canelo Alvarez happens to be one of the guys you're talking about, one of the guys you're hinting at, well, it just so happens Canelo expressed an interest in facing Artur before the Brown fight. He didn't wait until afterwards.
What was wrong with how he looked in the Brown fight?
Aside from that clash of heads that caused that gash on Artur's forehead, a similar gash to the one that Badu Jack suffered on his forehead when he fought Marcus Brown. That aside, Marcus Brown had minimal success.
Artur was guiding him around that ring like a log down a stream.
He obviously outworked the guy, pinned him down, kept him on the run, dropped him 2 times, and secured the W in spite of that gruesome injury.
The injury did add a sense of urgency to the fight.
The amount of blood that was pouring out of it, I've no doubts that Artur was worried that the fight might get stopped on cuts, that he might not be allowed to continue as a result of how much blood was coming out of that gash. But Artur was able to deliver, and he was able to deliver on a deadline. And if he did look less than perfect, at least in Andre Ward's eyes, not mine.
Was Andre saying that he saw a lot of shots that he couldn't get off?
As if to imply that Artur Beterbiev has all of a sudden lost a step rather conveniently, I might add. As if to imply that Artur has lost a step. You don't think that the blood gushing out of that guy's forehead, getting on his face, getting on his eyes, might have something to do with that?
I can understand saying he looked a little less than perfect.
You don't think that the clash of heads, the amount of blood that was streaming down his face round after round, trying to get that cut under control, trying to bide Artur time to seal the deal before the ringside doc calls it, you don't think that had something to do with anything? Because as far as the boxing and the boxing match, it was a fight that never got away from Artur. Artur was in control. Head clash, gash, and all. Artur was dictating everything that happened. When was Marcus Brown winning the fight?
Just seems convenient to me that Ward's trying to imply Artur's lost a step in a fight that he dominated.
At a time when he's being tabbed as a potential opponent option for Canelo Alvarez, it all seems very convenient to me, very cheap.
Canelo's critics are splitting hairs, looking for things to criticize him over.
But when you look at who Canelo's critics are, compare Canelo's career to their careers, you'll see what the criticism is really all about.
Not that Andre Ward didn't have a great career. He did. It's just that Canelo's career is better.
And I don't view two middleweights in Jermall Charlo and Demetrius Andrade. I don't view a super middleweight in David Benavidez as being a bigger threat to Canelo than today's Artur Beterbiev, who still has 100% KO percentage, is a naturally bigger guy than they are, and a much bigger puncher.
I mean, if what Andre Ward says is true, then why aren't Jermall Charlo and Demetrius Andrade targeting Artur? Why isn't David Benavidez?
He's got to be sick of cutting all the way down to super middleweight. Kid's massive for that division, but I don't see David Benavidez kicking down anybody's door for an Artur Beterbiev fight.
He's lost a step. I thought he was so beatable.
So why don't one of those three guys go up there and beat him? He'd certainly be a cut above the kind of guys that they have been fighting. Not surprised to hear that Canelo Alvarez is targeting light heavyweight champions now for what could be his descent from the cruiserweight division if he does in fact end up facing Lunga Makabu or maybe Biso Michuno, whoever. I'm not surprised to hear this. I told you guys, he did what he needed to do at 168 pounds, and nobody
Else down there has anything to offer him, so why would he go back?
I don't think he will, and there are better fights for him at 175 pounds anyway against more challenging opponents. There are more challenging opponent options at light heavyweight than super middleweight. If for some reason you're still not happy with what Canelo Alvarez is doing, beating world champions from 168 to cruiserweight back down to 175 pounds, if that don't satisfy you, I hate to break the news to you, but nothing will. Now, Matchroom impresario Eddie Hearn, who's good buddies with Canelo Alvarez, he says Canelo Alvarez should resume his career at light heavyweight. He should resume his career at 175 pounds, and for all intents and purposes, that does seem to be what's on the itinerary for Team Alvarez. If the English executive had his say in the situation, he would prefer for Alvarez to continue his crusade as a light heavyweight. It's not just a case of they're going to work with me if there's a better opportunity, but it's my job to provide the best opportunities. We know we're the best promotional company out there for him, but we have to show him the right path, and hopefully we'll do that in early January, Hearn told IFL. I personally think Canelo should look to become undisputed at 175 pounds, and I think he can do it. To be undisputed in two weight classes will be incredible, and I think that's a move that will be very exciting. So whether you're Dimitri Bivol, or whether you're Joe Smith, or whether you're Artur Beterbiev, you hope that Canelo Alvarez will give you that call to give you the opportunity to be in a mega fight. Alvarez has only fought once as a light heavyweight. He knocked out Sergey Kovalev in 2019 and soon after vacated the WBO belt he won in the fight. It's not lost on Hearn that Alvarez could fight anyone he chooses, since he is boxing's biggest breadwinner and pound-for-pound king. That includes the current crop of 168-pounders who are not champions, or 160-pound fighters who want to move up to fight the Mexican star at a weight he chooses. Hearn even took Alvarez's conquests one step and weight class further. I think Canelo could fight a heavyweight champion, Alexander Usyk, but I think it would have to be an agreeable weight.
Because he can't see Usyk coming back down to cruiserweight.
Listen, I don't want to waste a lot of time on a potential Alexander Usyk versus Canelo Alvarez fight as a conversation piece, because I don't actually view that as a potential fight. I think it would be asking a lot of Canelo Alvarez, in spite of him being this era's pound-for-pound king. I think it would be asking a lot of him to face Alexander Usyk, the former undisputed cruiserweight champion, now turned unified heavyweight champion.
He's tied up with Anthony Joshua anyway.
It's not a realistic proposition at this time in the least bit, and I won't begrudge Canelo Alvarez for not fighting Alexander Usyk.
What, am I supposed to be mad at this guy?
There's a portion of the article that states that Canelo Alvarez, being boxing's cash cow, he can have his pick of the litter. Any of those guys at 160, 168, 175, as high as heavyweight, as far as Eddie Hearn is concerned. And that bit of it, that's true, though that's only telling half the story. Why is it
that Canelo Alvarez can have his pick of the litter?
Because he's boxing's cash cow.
Okay, well, how is it that he became boxing's cash cow?
How'd that happen?
Well, I think it has a lot to do with his fan base and why they follow him. What he delivers, those fight fans. And what does Canelo Alvarez deliver? Those fight fans. Undisputed title fights, unification matches, several unbeaten champions beaten in succession, 4 divisions worth of top-tier, top-shelf talent. That's what Canelo Alvarez delivers them. You hear a lot of people griping online, a lot of people complaining, but those people don't actually represent the paying public, because the paying public, a good portion of them, they're with Canelo, and that's why he's boxing's cash cow.
The public is with him, not with Jamal.
And not with David. They're with Canelo Alvarez because Canelo Alvarez unified the super middleweight division in record time, where David Benavidez, he was there before Canelo Alvarez. He didn't unify a fucking title. He lost his on the scales.
I think his best hope of getting a world title now is to wait for Canelo Alvarez to vacate all of his.
I ain't hearing no rumors and no rumblings about David Benavidez, who I think is a growing boy, who I think is very close to outgrowing the super middleweight division. Better still, I'm not hearing any rumors and any rumblings that David Benavidez is on the cusp of moving up to the light heavyweight division, even though it might be better for him. It might be a better weight, an easier weight for him to make. Better still, David seems to be remaining at super middleweight.
For better or worse.
You wonder why the fans are more on Canelo's side than David's, and it's because Canelo Alvarez did what David and several other fighters didn't do at this weight. He consolidated the titles. He unified this division. He became its undisputed champion, and now he's setting his sights on bigger fish.
It's the truth. You don't have to fucking like it.
You don't have to fucking like Canelo, though. Realize, if you don't, you're in the minority, my friend, because the vast majority of boxing fans that pay for boxing, they're on Canelo's side.
He didn't turn his nose up at Erislandy Lara. He fought him.
Fought Austin Trout, fought Floyd Mayweather Jr., fought Erislandy Lara, fought Miguel Cotto, fought Gennady Golovkin 2 times, won 24 rounds with that division's boogeyman.
Neither Demetrius Andrade or either of the Charlo brothers fought fucking Lara.
They didn't want to know. Samson Lukowicz, David Benavidez's promoter, he's the reason that plant fight didn't happen sooner rather than later. He's the one who wanted to wait, and that's Canelo Alvarez's fault.
This is why Canelo's the cash cow of boxing.
He's done all the things that these guys haven't done. Ticked off on all the boxes they haven't ticked off on.
That's why the paying public's on his side, not yours.
No matter how many times you see a guy try to talk down Canelo Alvarez's accomplishments online, on boxing Twitter, boxing YouTube, in the real world, the paying public that pays money to see boxing,
Those are his customers, and that's what matters.